14.
No one should ever buy an iPhone 14 from this point on. It's cold to the touch. The finish almost feels satin-like, smooth matte sides. You can't see them even if you try. That's partly because of these washed out colours. The front and the back now also have rounded edges. Very soft, but just noticeably slimmer, a massive amount lighter, more rounded, softer to the touch. I didn't expect how much I'd like it. Aside from the feel, the notch has been replaced by Dynamic Island, which I think looks better and has some functional perks too, like being able to see your ongoing egg time. And then at the bottom you've got the new USB-C port, also colour matched to your phone. And I would say, like, plug it straight into most good modern The iPhone 15 has a 6.1-inch screen, and by 2023 standards feels pretty compact. The iPhone 15 Plus has a 6.7-inch screen, which sounds like a small difference, but in terms of screen area is actually just over 20% bigger. Meaning that unlike most high-end phones today, whose screen refreshes 120 times per second, which makes them appear buttery smooth, the screens here refresh only 60, which would have been the industry standard, but just from like 2015. The iPhone 15 and 15 Plus should have a 90Hz or 120Hz high refresh rate screen. They're the most expensive current smartphones that don't have one. Coming from what I'm used to, for the first couple of days, it felt laggy, especially when changing between the different camera lenses. But then also, it doesn't immediately make them some sort of scam like Twitter might make it seem. I guess Apple decided that these non-Pro phones would drain too much energy by staying on, so the main perk of this whole standby feature kind of disappears. You might not notice it in most normal environments, so long as you have auto brightness on, the next time you're in harsh sun, you absolutely will. Plus, I've already had two quite scary collisions with these phones, with some damage to the body, but zero to the screens themselves. They're very crack resistant. Every iPhone that I've used for a year or so, they all end up with scratches in pretty much all areas, apart from the camera lenses, which in my experience are pretty well protected by the outer rims and the sapphire coating. The iPhone 15 has better battery life than any base iPhone I've ever used before. But it is better than the normal-sized 15 Pro, which I do find quite amusing. And you will get... Okay, we need to talk about the cameras. I feel like cameras on iPhones and what you're actually getting on each model is nowhere near as clear as it used to be. Because, so one of the headline features of the iPhone 15 is a new 48-megapixel camera sensor. The 48-megapixel sensor on the iPhone 15 is a decent amount smaller than the one on the 15 Pros, and actually the 14 Pros, which enables us to capture my entire photos and videos from now on than last year's Pro Max. The Pro iPhones have always had a proper telephoto camera which lets you do this. The base iPhones have always had no telephoto camera, so you can only do this. On the main camera, at 48 megapixels, you can actually zoom in 2 times into that, cut out half the image on the top and the bottom, and half the image on the sides, and still end up with a 12 megapixel area in the middle, which is the same res that all of the iPhone 14s shot at, just using their normal one-time zoom mode. Now, but then these new phones start to pull ahead in a very serious way. For starters, they take 24 megapixel photos, even though the 14 Pros also accept that, thanks to the new phones having an extra layer of image processing called Photonic Engine happening with night mode photos, the gap, in a way, actually becomes bigger. I almost could not believe what I was seeing when I took these samples to work. But the iPhone 15s have the same chip as the 14 Pros. And in fact, the 14 Pros have better camera hardware, and also they have a LiDAR sensor, which is specifically built to capture depth information. Since the way Apple tends to do things now, with their Pro phones you'll get the very latest cutting-edge chip, with the base phones you get last year's chip. But this year, Apple called the chip on the 15 Pros the A17. Well, what does the average user need more power for? However, this jump that we've just had from the A15 and the iPhone 14s to the A16 and the iPhone 15s is a pretty big. The only thing that you will miss out on is the console games that Apple's specifically getting made for the 15 Pros. But if you're in the UK, both the iPhone 15 and the 15 Plus are £50 cheaper than the iPhone 14s were at launch, which makes it feel like they are back in line, because Apple does still sell the iPhone 14 for $699 compared to the $799 for the 15. A phone that looks better, feels a lot better, is faster, takes significantly better photos, and lasts longer.